We're running perfectly for time, and I think Chris.
Can I make a suggestion? Sorry, to everyone. Do you think we should finish off with Chris and the mayor, or do we take tea first? No, I said that. No, but you want to have tea first, or do you want to finish?
Okay. All right. Okay, so we're going to. I think that's a great call.
Let's take tea off.
We're gonna push through and finish now. You guys have been amazing. There's one slight problem. Oh, there's Chris. Okay, great. Okay, we've got Chris coming up now. Just to say that Chris is the editor of Lopo Weekblad. He initiated these land summits, the one that was held in Bella. He chaired that session, that land summit, did an amazing job. And when we were looking for someone to sort of close off the day, or speak about the day, not close off the day, his name came up, and we're greatly thankful to you, Chris, that it wasn't a problem, it wasn't an issue. We phoned him up and he said he'll drop everything and he'll be here and come and share the similar passion that we have at the moment about these good stories. So Chris, thanks a lot for making the time and the effort. I know you've got to catch a plane tonight to get back to Cape Town. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Simon, and just very humbled to be here. Walter, Chester, Simon, what a fantastic initiative. When we started the Bella better. I'll speak a bit louder too. Anyway, all I wanted to say was it's incredibly humbling to be here today. To hear these stories is really exceptional, and I don't think something like this has ever been held. Not that I have ever attended, where a whole community has been brought together and all the stories of success have been shared. And I think what is happening today is a lot more significant than what one initially appreciates. So I think in the years going forward, you'll really appreciate the import of what has happened here today. And I just want to say congratulations to Chester and Walter and Simon. Very well done. So. So I thought of just giving you a bit of an overview of a passion of mine. My family farms up in Indries. I'm from the northeastern Cape. I know this part of the world very well. I was hoping to stay extra day to do a bit of fishing, but that hasn't completely worked out. But I mean, coming from a small town community and having seen how my small town of Indries has gone backward over the years and basically fallen apart, it's always been a dream of mine that somehow one can sort of start reconfiguring communities and getting everyone to start pulling in the same direction. So where I want to start. Steve, can you on? Technical problems is always the last part for the course. So where I'd like to start is just social cohesion and why we have to thank the Guptas for a lot of the good that's going on in South Africa at the moment. So everyone knows the story, where expropriation without compensation comes from, the fight back of the Zuma camp at the ANC elective conference. Bell Pottinger, a big multinational marketing firm, was hired by the Guptas to engineer the Fight Back campaign. Very effective, extraordinarily effective. Social media bots were employed, which are basically false accounts to push a certain narrative on social media. Really started getting traction, the whole idea of white monopoly capital. And I must say here I have to congratulate the media. There isn't often an opportunity to congratulate the media, because I do think that they often do a lot more harm than they do good. But if it wasn't for the media, all this whole issue of state capture wouldn't have come out, and we wouldn't know where we were standing today. We wouldn't have the Zondo Commission, we wouldn't have the Nugent Commission. So in this case, I think the media did a really good job. But what all of this did was it really started fraying at the fabric of our society, and really started affecting the social cohesion that we had hoped we would have built up over the years. And it felt at some point it felt as if the wheels were coming off in our society, and that things were really taking a turn for the worse. But what people didn't realize is that, you know, we've been coming along together as South Africans for quite a long time, a few hundred years. And interestingly, right here at the Bushman's River, black and white South Africans, I was speaking to Chester earlier about this, have been living cheek by jowl for the longest period of time anywhere in Africa. So the relationships that we've got between white and black South Africans run a lot deeper than what people really appreciate. And at the height of all the social chaos in South Africa, the Institute of Race Relations actually did some research among ordinary South Africans to find out exactly how far apart we had drifted, and discovered some rather extraordinary results. South Africans actually remain broadly of common mind. If you see on the if you have a look at the graph there, you'll see that white and black South Africans agree that race relations have improved since 1994, above 80%. The only significant departures of agreement are sports teams, that sports teams should be elected on merit. Above 90% of white South Africans agree, and above 70% of black South Africans agree. As we have seen with the Springboks now, that is not necessary anymore, because we've got some really extraordinary black Springboks in our team that have actually won a few games for us. The other one that I found quite interesting, different races need each other for progress. Black and white are actually on par there, both above 80% of black and white South Africans, which is really extraordinary. And I mean, if one takes into account that this research was done at the height of all the drama with the Bell Pottinger Fight Back campaign, whites must take second place in society. Black and whites agree that shouldn't be the case, everyone below 30%. So basically the idea is, and this is quite significant, because a person needs to be very careful not to take too much notice about the social media noise happening out there. We live and Chester also referred to it, I mean, we're living in the sort of the first throes of the fourth industrial revolution, where not everyone quite knows what's going on. I don't always know what's going on, because everyone's got a voice. Media has been it's completely democratic. Everyone can say whatever they want to say, and it sort of creates a lot of peripheral noise that one sort of tends to get sucked into, because one hasn't been trying to cut that out. So this is why this sort of research is incredibly important. And coming back to that idea of white and black South Africans, the relationships that we've got run a lot deeper than what we imagine, and that what some other really scaly UK public relations firm could destroy. So what do we need? And this has been something that I've thought about for many years, is thinking back on my community that I came from. We need to reconfigure our communities in some other way. I mean, I remember growing up, the fat stock sale once a month, the tennis club, the golf club, the New Year's Eve, Old Year's Eve dances, all those things that people did that made the community worthwhile have sort of disappeared. And why isn't that coming back? Why aren't we reconfiguring our communities? Because as the research has shown, we all basically want the same things. We want to lead sensible, meaningful lives. And that means education for our children, healthcare, safety, employment. How do we get that? How do we get our communities to all be pulling in the same direction, that we can sort of recreate not what was in the past, but recreate meaningful, sensible communities? And that is, I think, what we've got getting a glimpse of today, is that the community can pull together and start working together and start reconfiguring how they go about things in a way that benefits everyone. And how do you achieve that? You achieve that by unlocking the vast potential in our communities. And this is something that a lot of speakers have spoken about at Bella Bella, is that if you look at our communities, there's a lot of untapped potential that is just lying there. I mean, one just has to listen to the speakers today. Creating wealth where there was nothing. I mean, the very first speaker that went into Pedi area and built a ostrich project where there was nothing. I mean, there was literally nothing. That potential was latent, was lying there. It just needed somebody to go and develop it. And this sort of effort will actually solve all of South Africa's problems. I mean, it's as profound as that. It will solve all of South Africa's problems. So we also, as South Africans, tend to sell ourselves short. We tend to listen too often to politicians. We tend to listen too often to journalists. And journalists are particularly guilty of this. There's an old adage in journalism: if it bleeds, it leads. So journalists are out for sensationalism, and it's not healthy for a country in South Africa where we're actually trying to put the pieces back together and trying to build something meaningful. We did some research at Landbouweekblad. We got an agricultural economist to start going through all the title deeds at the title deeds office, and to try and figure out exactly what's going on in the land market. And it turns out we're not doing as badly as the politicians are trying to make out. And there I've lost that. Oh, here we go. So, just in a nutshell, we found that the private sector has been redistributing land at twice the rate that the state has been doing, and we know this because the Kgalema Motlanthe high-level report has found this, that the biggest obstacle to land reform has not been the willing seller, willing buyer principle, but actually let's call it euphemistically, the capacity problems that exist in the Department of Land Affairs. And we discovered that basically, as a percentage of high-value land, I'll just use that in black hands, in the Eastern Cape, 54% of high-value land is already in black hands, and in KwaZulu-Natal, 76% of high-value agricultural land is already in black hands. And that is quite significant, as we will see later, because talking about unlocked potential in South Africa, I mean, if you look at the rainfall and you look at where the rain actually falls in South Africa, it's all on the eastern side of South Africa. When we had the big drought in 2015-16 and we weren't capable of planting maize on the western part of South Africa, we should have been planting maize here in the former Transkei. All the land that we're losing up in Mpumalanga with the mining activities, that production is going to have to move down to the eastern parts of the country, which is just a few hundred kilometers up the coast. So that potential is there. That potential needs to be developed, and that potential is being developed as we speak. And this is what is so extraordinary about a day like this, is when you start getting everybody together that is actually doing something, one is amazed at how much is already being done and how much momentum has already been achieved. I just think in this area, I think of Mrs. Gloria Sarobe from Wippold. She's quite an extraordinary woman, and somebody who's very dear to my heart. The head of Wippold on the board of Denel, extraordinary woman, about 9 billion rand strong. She's got this extraordinary project in Quintani. She owns the Wavecrest Hotel, for those of you that enjoy fishing that part of the coast, where they plant over 2,000 hectares now of maize and soya in one of the poorest areas of South Africa, and achieve actually yields that equal commercial yields, equal and higher than commercial yields in areas that we haven't been able to plant maize in 60, 70 years. I mean, we've had the massive food program. None of that worked. And Mrs. Sarobe, who actually grew up in that area, went back and actually managed to do it. And how did she manage to do it? She spent 2 years speaking to the chiefs. And actually got that project off the ground. You've got the Naira Macadamia project. You've got guys like Sean Brown up in the Cat River Valley that he's got into partnership with the Seko Makoma, the Xhosa king up there. All attempts to develop or to having worked at Landbouwerkblad for so long, my English laat my nie steek van tyd tot tyd. Ontginning waarde, they mining value where people thought that there wasn't value before. So there, when we were speaking about, when the previous speaker was talking about, we got to go and find that potential. There's already a lot of potential. 54% of the best agricultural land in this country is already in black hands. And then this graph, I think, sort of does put things into perspective. So the top line is black South Africans, where we stand, and the bottom line is white South Africans, brown South Africans, coloured South Africans, and white South Africans. Two things I want to say about this graph is, firstly, white South Africans are statistically irrelevant. I don't know if that has ever occurred to you, but in South Africa, statistically, white South Africans aren't relevant. There are too few white South Africans to be able to generate the economic growth that we need to be able to take the country forward and to absorb enough people into the mainstream economy. So there is actually no other choice, statistically, but to go into wholesale partnerships with black South Africans to be able to grow the economy to the extent that we need to grow it. Secondly, that 45 million black South Africans that we have in this country, we started off with 4 million unemployed in 1994. We're sitting over 6 million at the moment. That's 2 and a bit million more people that are unemployed in this country. Previous speakers have alluded to it. I mean, it's not sustainable, people. It's just simply not sustainable. At some point, the wheels are going to come off. And as we see now, the wheels are slowly starting to come off because the state is bankrupt. We're struggling to pay the social grants that we're paying, and that in many cases we should be paying because people are desperately poor. But we need another model. So those are the 2 points I want to make about that graph. So in the throes of expropriation without compensation and the whole sort of aftermath of the Bill Pottinger fiasco, we at Landbouwerkblad decided what could we possibly do to try and put the whole national debate on a more sort of sustainable trajectory. So we did what journalists do, and we decided to get people to tell their stories. And in my 20-odd years, first as the editor of the Farmers Weekly and now the editor of the Landbouwerkblad, I have met a few people, and a lot of my staff have, and we sat down, we had a few cups of coffee, and we started making a list of the most extraordinary people we've met in agriculture who have done extraordinary things and who really have achieved something. And within a very short space of time, we actually had too many people. And we decided what we would do, we get all these people together at one local area, we do it in a rural area of South Africa, so that everyone could stay focused on the job at hand. And we would get these people to tell their stories. Both black, white South Africans would go and tell these stories over a period of 2 days. We didn't have much time, so everyone got a 10-minute slot, and we had quite a few guys from the Eastern Cape. Walter spoke there, Simon attended, Chili spoke there, Amatlelo Agri, Jeff, Leonard, they were all there, all speaking. And the interesting point about this was, and this really struck a chord to me earlier this morning, is the power of one. These people have all been individuals doing things. It's often not committees that does it. That achieve this. It's individuals that get up and say, we're going to be doing this, we need to do something, and they do it for different reasons. Some do it because they are, and most of them, was quite interesting, are deeply religious, have got deep religious convictions that that the way things are going in this country are not sustainable and it's not right. Others have seen a business opportunity, and those three models that I think that Dai showed earlier, I mean, all three of those models apply. So just a few pictures. It was up in Bella Bella. It was in the Volkswinkel auction facilities. We had almost over 600 people there the first day. Our whole approach was that for the first time in South African history, farmers would come and tell their stories, no one else. Because everyone speaks about farmers and has a lot to say about farmers, but no one ever listens to what the farmers have to say. So we decided we'd get the farmers to speak. The day before we had the conference, our partners in this venture, Agri-SA, let us know that the Deputy President, Mr. David Mabuza, wanted to speak. We were dead against it. We had a stand-up fight about it until somebody said, well, you know, he's after all the Deputy President. So we said, well, okay, that's fair enough. Let him come and talk. We gave him 10 minutes like everybody else. He went on for half an hour. And he was late. And it was actually quite entertaining because they had a bomb squad there and the farmers had to move their buckies and everyone was just sitting around having their coffee and actually having quite a chuckle. But the Deputy President came and he actually made quite a reconciliatory speech. It was actually quite a good speech and it all turned out well because it really did set the tone. The Minister of Land Reform was there. The DG of Agriculture was there for both days. And it was the first time that the politicians, I mean, I saw the Deputy President walk up onto the stage and look out across the crowd, and it was a mixed crowd. It wasn't a white crowd. It was white and black all sitting there together wanting to tell their stories. And for the first time, the politicians were completely cornered. I mean, they couldn't point a finger. Not necessarily that they wanted to, but it was just the right tone for the day. And then just a few more pictures. Farmers came, spoke about their experiences, and I really do feel like today. I mean, you know, there was optimism that South Africans can pull together, and I got a deep sense that the biggest problem that we have in this country are A, politicians, and B, the media. And I mean, I am part of the media. If ordinary South Africans can't come together and talk about the issues that affect their lives and can come to some sort of resolution, we'll make this country work. But it's in no one's interest and not in the politicians' interest to get people together to talk. And this is what happened in Bella Bella. It's just a few more pictures. And then we really had great coverage. I mean, the Afrikaans press really picked up on this, and here I have to just say that the English press actually didn't understand what was going on. They were there, the Sunday Times, everyone was there, the Business Day was there, even the Chinese national broadcaster was there, and they didn't quite understand, they didn't understand opening with a few words of devotion and a prayer. They didn't quite get it, but the Afrikaans press, they sort of really picked up on this. The Burger, the digital media actually did quite a good job. The SABC, ETV, the Daily Sun, which is the biggest circulating black newspaper, the Government Information Service, who else was there? The Sowetan. And anyway, let's just skip through those. So basically the point is that there was, suddenly you got this incredible traction in the mainstream media about farmers telling their stories. It was the first time that people had heard from farmer level what had been done, and just the mere the sheer weight of positivity, I think, just basically battered people into submission. If you sit for 2 days and you listen to 60 speakers all telling extraordinary stories, I mean, and really extraordinary stories. I mean, you know, Walter was one of 60 people. Now you get 60 Walters to tell their stories. I mean, you know, it does affect you. So just some of the take-home lessons from Bella Bella is that we really do have exceptional South Africans. And that idea of power of one is so true. You have exceptional people, and because they're exceptional, they often are individuals that stand up and do something, and they do something extraordinary. People that don't, excuse me, that are just ordinary South Africans. You know, there's a story of Bonnie Vale. Philip Jonker, which really made a deep impression on me. Philip Jonker is a wine farmer, and he's got two buddies. One guy is an engineer, and the other guy is an auditor. The engineer grew up in the local coloured township, and they had a prayer group, and they in their prayer group they realized, but you know, the problem is that these coloured kids coming out, there's not enough place at the local school for the coloured kids, and the education they're getting is not good enough, and that these kids are just basically veering off into sort of social oblivion. They're getting involved in drugs and all the social ills. So they decided they'll build a school. And they ended up building a 120 million rand school in Bonneville. I mean, quite this extraordinary technical school that they put up. And they got everyone involved. I mean, they got earth-moving companies involved to give their time for free. They got the architects involved. Thanks. Sorry. They got architects involved. They got everybody involved. I mean, and they've got a technical school now that produces high-level education, producing superb graduates that are superbly trained for the job market, that become farm managers, that can work on the farms, that become artisans in the community. That's 120 million rand from nothing. I mean, it really does blow your mind away. The other point is that the prosperous country is good for everyone, and that idea of a rising tide raises all ships is so true. And if you just bear that graph in mind again, if we don't get this right, we're not going anywhere. So, you know, there are many ways of seeing this. I mean, somebody said earlier that and that's sort of the definition of Ubuntu, that you ask somebody through somebody else. And that is so true. And I heard the other day that the Japanese actually are great believers in that you can only raise yourself up by raising your neighbors up. And I mean, if you don't want to go the charitable route, I mean, if you have prosperous farmers, you actually have somebody, if you're a stud breeder like Justin Stewart, you can sell bulls to them. If you're a shopkeeper, those people have got more buying power. So that idea of a rising tide raises all ships. I mean, it's just something to bear in mind, because that is basically the bottom line. And then you need to connect people. You know, somebody mentioned earlier, people do business with friends. And that is so true. I mean, I see as a privileged white South African, I mean, I see in my life how my networks have worked for me, and that is why a day like this is of such critical importance, because you walk out here, you have a cup of tea together, a cup of coffee together, and you meet people, and suddenly you've got a common frame of reference, and I think that is what we managed to get going in Bella Bella. Black and white South Africans actually sort of gathering around a common purpose. So what's happening here today is nothing short of like critical national importance. Then the idea of reverse mentoring, and this is also that has a biblical reference when in the scriptures it says about moenie jou talente onder maatemmer sit nie. I'm not quite sure what the English expression for that is, but you mustn't hide your talents. You must visit the orphans and the widows. Now, within the context of agriculture, that instruction isn't so to make your life more difficult, but it is to make your life more enriching and satisfying. Because what we have found, and that's a story that Jannie de Villiers, the CEO of Grain SA, always tells, they've got 90 commercial farmers that mentor black grain farmers, everyone from small-scale farmers, like really like 1 hectare in the depths of the Transkei and KwaZulu, to commercial guys that produce about 250 tons of grain. And these commercial guys, I mean, these are mielieboere, they're Vrystaatse mielieboere. They're hard men, and they start mentoring, and they really get into it. I mean, they really, you know, as farmers, they get excited about the progress, the technical progress people make. You know, they plant GM cultivars and they get the yields. Extraordinary stories of people getting 1 ton a hectare, which incidentally is how much you need to feed a household, suddenly getting 7 tons within a space of 1 or 2 years. And Jannie always tells a story that he always makes a point in driving with these farmers to the projects and then asking them, how's it going? And they're very excited to giving him all the technical details. And then at some point he asks them, how does it change you? And then these guys pull off the road and they just burst into tears. And this is quite an extraordinary thing, quite an extraordinary story, that getting involved is not only charity. There's a reverse mentoring happening where that is deeply satisfying in the sense not only that you're helping people, but also that you're tackling some of the most intractable problems that face South Africa. And I think there's a lot of research to be done in that, and you can start in the Bible, because go out and visit the poor and the orphans and the widows. And then we need more sensible people in the community. We need people that are invested in the community, that want the same thing. And I think essentially most South Africans want the same thing. South Africans are, by almost without exception, conservative people. They want things to work. They want things to move forward. And I mean, what we've seen in Stadtheim and Kumga and Dordrecht and Sterkstone and Barclays, where the municipal offices have been burnt down. I mean, this is moving in the wrong direction. I mean, we need to, as I said earlier, reconfigure our communities where we get a civic mindedness that won't allow that to happen. Because I mean, when I heard what happened in Stadtheim, I mean, I was deeply shocked. I just, for 2 days, I was walking around in an absolute daze, trying to figure out how this happens, how people burn down the center of governance, and then a clinic, and then a shopping center. I mean, it's just, I still haven't quite gotten over it. And then we must grow the economy. There's no other way. We need to grow the economy. We can't be stumbling along at a 0 or 0.8% growth rate. We need to create jobs. We've got over 6 million people that are unemployed, and there are too few whites to do the job. So we have no choice. For those far-right racists in the recesses of South African society, I'd like to tell them that. Come on, there's no other way. And then there are new business opportunities to be exploited. There really are business opportunities to be exploited. I mean, I'll get back to this a little later. But that idea of the rising tide raises all ships. Everyone does better. Everyone makes more money. Everyone moves forward. I mean, you can't have enough wealth. We as business people, this opportunity is just too good to be true. I was reading an interview with Kosef, the guy from Investec, and he was saying, when they did their foray into Europe, very difficult doing business there. It's very regulated, a lot of smart people, all the niches have been taken. It's really difficult to do business here, but here in South Africa, there are just so many opportunities still, and it's something to consider. And then clarity comes with processes, something that the CEO of Senbes, Francois Strydom, always says. So sometimes you don't know where it'll end, where the eventual path will end. But if you start with something and you start working on something, the clarity will come with time. And I think we've heard this today too, is that the longer you work on something, the clearer it becomes. You might take a off-try at some point, but the longer you work on it, the clearer it becomes. Then I just wanted to make a few mentions in terms of a macro view. So the macro view is always not that important to me, because I think it's a lot more important what's happening here today on a community level. But just to give you some hope that we have some of our best people working on the problem at the moment, because we really are with our back against the walls in terms of the South African economy. Two people that have become deeply involved in trying to sort out the South African economy is, firstly, Dr. Johan van Zyl. He is head of Toyota Europe, one of our best business exports ever. He's one of only 3 non-Japanese executives on Toyota, and he was flying back from Tokyo, and he had just listened to President Cyril Ramaphosa's speech, his State of the Nation speech, heard him talk about Tumamia, and decided, well, that he's making himself available, and he started working out economic plans on how to get the economy back on track. And went to see the president, contacted the president, and today Dr. Johan van Zyl is actually heading up the overall economic plan that's being drawn up for South Africa by sector, and that includes agriculture. And interestingly enough, agriculture was one of the few sectors that when they were approached and said, here's the plan, we've had the plan for years, here's our plan, we can rock and roll. Dr. Johan van Zyl, coming out of the the automotive industry. Our automotive industry in South Africa is one of the great success stories in support from the state. We basically pay the Germans and the Americans to build their cars here. And that sort of model is being applied to different sectors of the economy. Dr. Johan van Zyl chairs these meetings, and also interesting thing that I've heard from guys that have attended these meetings, some of our top CEOs are sitting there, and they all sit and listen to Dr. Johan van Zyl and actually apply what he says. And that just shows you the quality of leadership that we have, that these guys, all sort of captains of industry, don't make it about the man, realize that it goes about the process, and realize that they need to knuckle down and take the leadership from this guy. Our other, don't know why the question mark's there, but Dr. Patrice Matsemba, you all know who he is, Rainbow Capital. He's actually a big investor in BKB, for those of you who are a BKB client. And he is doing a lot of work with organized agriculture, brokering relationships between organized agriculture and the tribal and tribal leadership. And I come back to that earlier graph that I showed, where the high value land in South Africa lies. I mean, this is very significant because politically, Cyril Ramaphosa is married with his sister, ne? That is, if I'm correct, yeah. And politically, it's actually not worth the ANC's while to be doing an outreach with organized agriculture to the chiefs, because they're a political base. So it's quite significant that if we can actually get to the point where we can start really going into those areas of our country where there is great potential and to start building on it, I mean, you know, you could be creating enormous amounts of wealth in a very short space of time. Then another guy, this is Nick Serfontein. Nick Serfontein wrote a letter to the president earlier this year, and he phoned me and he said he had this letter and what should he do with it. And I said, you know, we should publish this letter, man. Let's give it. I'm an editor of a magazine, so I'm always looking for stuff to publish. So I said, now give it to me, I'll publish it. So we published the letter in the Lumber Weekblad, and then it got translated to English, and it just went viral. And basically what Nick said was, and just to give you, I think we know who Nick is, I don't need to explain. I mean, his business is a few billion rand strong, ex-engineer, really superb, absolutely superb farmer. And he was just saying, like, I've already established all these black farmers. I'm helping hundreds of farmers. I know what's going on. Let me. You said, like Johan van Zyl, you said that, you know, you want to send people. Well, send me. I'm ready to do this. And it just went completely viral. And Nick was saying that that Sunday afternoon, their service crashed at the Cerny Group in Edenville, on his farm, just from the sheer volume of incoming mail. People just saying, please, please help us. And he was saying that, you know, he was shocked at how desperate people are just for help. Yeah, he just said it's you know, people need help, people want help, he can help. And he always says that, you know, you can turn the situation around within a year if the right people are allowed to do are allowed to do what they should be doing. And I mean, Nick, he supports, I think it was 300. He's established something like 200 farmers and got 300 farmers that he supports, buys their weaners in. He's got a value chain right down to the end user. So, and he is now on the advisory panel. He was then President Ramaphosa had held him and said, well, then, you know, get onto the advisory panel for agriculture and land reform, and that is the advisory panel. Sans Wandile Sihlobe, who is the very talented agriculturist for AgBiz and was just voted Agriculturist of the Year, grew up in Lusikisiki, interestingly enough. He isn't on that photograph, but we have Mohammed Karan on the right and the left, and we've got Tembeke Nagatobe, who's a lawyer. I'll speak about him now, but the guys in agriculture, you've got Mohammed Karan. He's the head of agricultural economics at Stellenbosch. You've got Dan Crick, head of Agri SA. You've got Nick Serfontein there on the right-hand side. They're the sort of the hardcore farmers. And you've got William Klati, who's the head of AFASA. So you've got some real talent looking at the problems in agriculture, and they're also supposed to be submitting their report in early January. And actually not a bad composition of group of people, one or two that I would maybe not have chosen, but I'm not the president. So this chap is actually a very interesting guy. Tembeka. He wrote this book, and I really do suggest that everyone reads it. And his point is he is completely against expropriation of compensation, because what his book is about the early jurists in the early black lawyers in South Africa. So we always thought that the first black law firm was founded by Nelson Mandela and Walter Sisulu. It's not true. Early the turn of the century, there were guys like David Malangena. There were all these guys from Fort Hare, the black intelligentsia that people like the Oka people, I'm just trying to, Noni Jubar, who writes about, and all these guys. I mean, they were at the turn of the century, they were all Oxford educated advocates and lawyers. And they came back to South Africa, and Cecil John Rhodes was in charge. And Cecil John Rhodes always said in the Cape Parliament, he said, equal political rights for all civilized Africans. And civilized Africans meant that you needed to be Christian, you needed to own property, and you needed to be educated. And these guys came back and said, well, how about this political rights? We Christian, they all came from the mission schools, Anglican, Methodist. They were educated in Oxford, better than Rhodes was, and they were property owners. Back then they still could own the property. I mean, that's where Alice and these places, that's where they came from, and said, well, where are our political rights? And Rhodes, being the rather unpleasant human being that he was, said, well, we make exception in this case. And they said, no, you can't make exception. And they tried to take him on in court and tried to fight it legally. And Tembeka's point is we're not going to go back to Rhodes. We're not going to do what Rhodes said and just wipe the Constitution off the table and say, okay, we're going to make exception. This doesn't suit us politically. We're going to have to, going back to these early black jurists, we're going to have to follow the example. We're going to have to play it by the book. And it's just a very interesting and quite hopeful perspective on the whole expropriation without compensation. And he's sitting on the panel. And that's Wandile Sihlobe, who also sits on the panel, the guy that grew up in Siki, good friend of mine, and he told me 2 weeks ago in Joburg, he said there's just no ways that expropriation without compensation will happen because of guys like Tembeka, who says that you have to play it by the book, and so President Cyril Ramaphosa has got his ear. So the whole-scale expropriation of farmland, from what we understand, what Wandile understands, won't happen. So sorry, I was the guy, Bella, who told everyone 10 minutes now. Sorry, okay, so I'll just finish off quickly. So these are all the, I just wanted to say that the work has been done. I mean, in South Africa, if you look at South Africa, people are already, all the models have been developed. There's no, I listen to the commentators that say, we need to sit and talk to each other. We can talk, but the models have been done. The social model, I mean, we've spoken about Bonneville, the Bonneville School, Partners for Possibility. That's something that the teachers might want to look at. Really great program. Future Farmers, Judy Stewart, kids from poor backgrounds that become managers of top farms. Walter Biggs, farm level, communal, Amadlelo, we've spoken, Whipple, we've spoken, restitution farms, the big restitution farms in the Lowveld that went defunct. These big companies went in, Komati Fruits, refurbished these farms. Great success story. Integrated models. Paul's Wittenberg, this is this guy, Gerrit van Vieren, who've actually developed these integrated models where they're bringing new land into production in partnership with black farmers. The interesting point there is, in the past 3 years, in Witzenberg-Ceres, which is most likely one of our most productive farming districts in South Africa, they've been growing by 8%, while the rest of the country has been growing by 0 or 0.1 or 0.2. They've been growing by 8%. And the reason why they grow by 8% is because there is investor confidence. There's a plan, people know what's going on. That plan has been there's buying from the municipality, and everyone knows what's potting. So they've been growing by 8%. Okay, I think I'm done. So what I've learned is, like, I'm deeply humbled by my fellow South Africans, really I am, and by what's happening here today. Wouldn't want to live anywhere else in the world, mainly because there's great fishing, and because what Kosef said, there's great opportunities. There really is, just hardcore business opportunities. And there's enormous hidden potential in this country, really. I mean, just here in this area, there are business people, there are CEOs, there are all sorts of people that are just not, that haven't been given the chance to rise to the surface. Unlocking this potential could possibly be the most satisfying thing that you ever do in your life, barring having children. And you unlock it by restoring people's dignity, and I think that is a very important point. I mean, a person mustn't take that too lightly. And then something Kali Skuman said, he's a big maize farmer up in Delmas, and he spoke at the Transvaal Agricultural Union nogal, and he said he for the first time has realized that he's always had what he calls the binnenbaan. So he's been privileged from the word go. He's at an advantage over everyone else, and now at the age of 72 is the first time he's realizing that. And I think sort of as white South Africans, you know, could go a long way to just sort of have appreciation for that. And if Kali says it, you know, and it's not only hopeful. I mean, I really do think it's going to reconfigure our communities, and there's a really great future for South Africa. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing the rag.
Yeah. Just before we say goodbye to Chris, because he's got to catch an aeroplane, I just wanted to thank him again. Chris, it's been wonderful having you here. Thanks for that talk, was brilliant.
Like,
And a little gift to you.